Hi! This video will help you to get started with organizing your application network in Starlify. We will take it in 3 steps. Where does the data come from? How will the data be kept up to date? How will the data be organized? Let's start with number 1. Before we get into where the data might be, let's clarify which data is needed to build a good application network. First of all, you need your systems or applications. These can be your ERP system, product information management system, and so on, and don't forget your external systems that you either send to or get information from. After adding the systems, you want to know how a system is integrated with other systems, whether it's via an SFTP file integration or an API. You should also find out which systems own the service. With this information, you can create services connected to your system. The services tell how to integrate or how other systems are integrated with the system. All good, we now know that we want to find systems and their services. But that won't make it a network. We need something that tells if a system is connected to another system. For this we use references. This is also referred to as contracts in some literature. The references define that a system is using another system's service, stating their relation. This is the foundation you need to create your application network. After you have added systems, services, and references, we can start defining flows. A flow is an end-to-end integration that visualizes how information is flowing between several systems. Now, where can we get these data from? Who has the information about which applications you have and how these are connected? Sometimes it is in the head of team members, sometimes in Excel sheets or even in Visio drawings. Also ask yourself if you have all or part of the data stored in a repository somewhere, like a CMDB or an integration platform. Maybe you have the information in several places, both in people's heads and in tables and repositories. If so, you need to decide if any of these sources can be used as a continuous source, like a CMDB with system information. Would it be good to keep the applications updated with the information from the CMDB? If so, an integration can be made via the Starlify API, feeding applications and future changes to these from the CMDB to Starlify. Probably you will find out that all the data needed to create an insightful application network aren't stored in one place, but don't worry, Starlify is created to easily crowdsource information. Now that we know what data we need, and where we can get it from, we get to question number 2, how will the data be kept up to date? Your company and application network are constantly evolving, new applications are added, integrations are made and others are changed. To be able to be an agile company in the digital transformation and maintain a good map to navigate changes in the application network, the map needs to be kept updated. An updated map will save you numerous hours in your change projects and incidents, because the insight saves time from meetings or searching for documentation. Keeping it updated starts with ownership. Do you have clear application ownership? That is a good start because the owners of the applications should be responsible for documenting their application's relations and dependencies. And as with all changes, your processes need to be updated. Do you need to update the documentation requirements for your application owners and developer teams? Can you run cron jobs for updates, or should you update manually? Different teams might want to update in different ways. These types of questions need to be answered and clearly communicated. Because if people don't know how to do it, they will probably not do anything at all. That will result in the teams getting back to old routines, and the map will be lost together with the agility. Ownership is, as mentioned, key to being able to keep an application network updated. However, the benefits of having an updated map of your application network are not only for the application owners and the developers creating integrations. The insight into the complexity of the application network or the specific dependency on one application can be crucial information for the management team or project managers planning the digital transformation of the company. The knowledge you create needs to be accessible to the whole company, and they should be invited as users. But of course, everyone doesn't need to add or change information, therefore you can add them as read-only users. But this should be a part of your plan, communicating the navigatable application network to the company. With the insight spread to the whole organization, the demand for having it updated will increase. We have now covered where the data comes from and how it will be updated. Let us answer question number 3. How will the data be organized? Just as the importance of having clear directions for documentation requirements, you also need to provide guidelines for how the data should be structured and organized. Because that will make it easier for everybody to contribute to the application network. What do we mean by guidelines then? How the application network is structured, what level of details is a minimum, and naming conventions are a few examples that would be good if there is a way of working before letting your organization add data. Let's talk a bit about how you can organize your application network. In Starlify, you are provided with a workspace. This workspace can then contain one or several networks, and each network will then contain a number of nodes, like systems, services, and references. The networks can be grouped and nodes can be connected between networks. This makes it possible to divide the application network into logical areas. For example, maybe you have operational areas like finance, logistics, research and development, and these departments have ownership of a specific set of applications. Then it might be a good idea to structure the departments into networks, because then the department can focus and see only what is relevant to them. Dividing the network in this way makes it easier to navigate and work with. This is just one example of how you can divide your application network into smaller pieces, but the rule of thumb should be that the way you divide it always should make it easier to understand. Let's move on to the level of detail. The same rule of thumb applies here as well. What information do we need to make it easy to understand? You will have to add systems, services, and references to make a network. But you can create an application network by simply saying that a system is integrated with another system. And you can also create a network where you describe in detail the services and endpoints that are used, and which middleware it goes through. It will provide different levels of insight, and maybe you don't need to have that amount of detail or don't have all the information needed. The more information you can provide, the better will the insight be, but it will also require more input from your organization. The good thing with Starlify is that you can evolve your level of detail in the application network as you go. But we recommend that you provide a guideline that states the minimal amount of detail that is required. Talking about details, so far we have just mentioned the nodes and networks, but there are also details of each node. For example, you can add a description of a system or a service. You can add whichever attribute you want by adding a custom attribute. This can be very useful by adding searchable attributes, for example. And it can also make it easier to comply with regulations like GDPR by, for example, adding an attribute that states if a system handles personal information data. Other attributes that are often used are documentation URLs for interfaces like OpenAPI specifications or other technical service documentation. Adding those to Starlify will make it easier and faster to find the information you need. You should think about what type of information about systems and services that is important for your company, and decide what to add and which should be mandatory. Naming conventions are also a good thing to decide beforehand because it will make it easier for everyone to contribute data if they know how to name systems, services, and references. Here are a few best practice examples that you can use. Company applications are modeled as systems. Try to avoid letter abbreviations, it is easier to understand full names. But we know that sometimes the letter abbreviation is the name people use, then add it afterwards in parentheses. For example, Company App, CA. Different integration interfaces in a system can be modeled as a separate subsystem. For naming, use the parent system name together with the type of interface. For example, Company App API. For HTTP, use the system name or the information object name depending on if the service has an integration interface parent system or if it is standalone on a system. For example, System API or Customer Information API. For SFTP, use the information object and file name. For example, Order Receipt File X. For generic APIs or query language APIs in general, we name the service with the logical service name, explaining what it does. For example, Get Order Details. For web services, we can model multiple web services under one single service representing the Web Service API. An operation is modeled as an endpoint connected to the service. For example, Customer Service and Get Contact. For event streaming, services are created under a system, and the topics are modeled as endpoints. For example, User Event Service and Create User Get User. For MQ, services can be created under a system, representing MQ brokers and endpoints for every queue. For example, User Queue Service and Create User Get User. There is also the node called middleware, which can have endpoints created as children. In our previous examples, we have usually said that the system owns the service. But if we want to model the software guiding the information, like an API gateway or an event streaming platform, we can use middleware. If we do like this, we will have more details about how the integration is set up and what tools that is used to create the integration. The systems will still own the services, but we will let the middleware own the endpoints, showing that the service is using the middleware, which provides an interface that other systems can refer to. Now we have covered systems and services, and also middleware. These make the foundation of how to connect to systems in the application network. References, or by some also called contracts, are the way we state that a system is using a service. The naming would therefore explain the purpose of how the system is using the service. For example, Post Order Details to ERP. After creating a network with systems, services, and references, we have our application web. We can see that systems are using services to communicate with each other. But it only shows a one-to-one dependency. Sometimes we have integrations or information flows that span over several systems when a process or action is triggered. Mapping these will give you unique insight and great documentation when changing or problem searching the application network. A flow is, as we said, an end-to-end integration describing how information flows. You can create a flow by adding one or more references. That is what is needed to create a flow, but you can also define the source and target system to make it even more detailed and explained. When naming a flow, we want to create a name describing the information object being moved between systems. For example, Order Details from OMS and Spanish Packlist to WMS. These were examples and best practices on how to build and name the content of your application network. Of course, you can use your own way to use the nodes to represent your application network. The rule should always be to map things in a way people will understand. Find more how-to articles in the Starlify Help Center. Follow the link below.